Hello. Today we're going to create a service or a background worker process using .NET Core 3.1. In Windows platform case, this simply is going to be a Windows service. In case of Linux, you can plug it into Linux background worker system called systemd. Let's go ahead and get started, because this is quite common for a lot of software systems to have some kind of a background work that needs to be executed on a specific schedule. This feature was missing in .NET Core 2, but it is available in .NET Core 3. Let's get started. Let's start with opening Visual Studio. I use Community Edition, which is free version for non-enterprises. I'm using version 2019, which is required for this. I'm going to go to File, New, and Project. And I'm going to find a template called Service Worker using .NET Core, as we can see. Click Next. I'm going to call it Test Worker. Click Create, and in just a second our solution is going to be created. I can immediately create Docker support, build Docker support for Linux. I'm going to create just Windows service in this case. Click Create. It will create both solution and a project for me. As you can see, this is created. I could actually build it. If we look our entry point, which is a program, it sets up just a host for our services. And it's using a default builder, which is not ASP builder, but a program builder. And I'm adding just a single hosted service called worker, which is in a different file right here. It automatically plugs in dependency injection. As you can see, I'm automatically injecting a logger into the worker, and it plugs in the main method for background service, and I'm overriding call execute async. I could actually run it right now and see my echo to the screen in a logger, which by default is using console logger. So let's go ahead and run it, and as we see, every second it will echo out worker running to the window. Now, what we want to do is add functionality where we can run scheduled tasks. To do that, we're going to add a NuGet package called Quartz. Quartz.net is an open source project that has functionality to create and run various scheduled tasks. And I'm going to use just the latest version. I'm going to acknowledge all the licensing agreements, and my package has been added. The Quartz.net relies on a concept called jobs. And jobs is simply a worker process. So let's create a simple job for us. We're going to add a new class, and we're going to call it simple job. And we need to make it public. In case of Quartz.net, if a scheduled job has not completed but schedule kicks in, a new instance of the same job is going to be created. Most of the time this is not what you want. And so I'm going to add disallow concurrent execution attribute that would enable us to opt out of that kind of behavior. And actually only allow single instance of the job to run in any given moment in time. So disallow concurrent execution is what we want. We're going to import that in. So far so good. Now we need to implement a simple interface called iJob. And that interface actually requires a single method called execute. And we're going to make it async. And our goal is to kind of stick to async await everywhere as we implement even background services. And the same applies to ASP.NET Core apps as well. So for us, we're just going to say, let's just confirm that everything works. So we're going to say file dot append all lines, all text async, sounds good. And then we're going to give it a path. And we're going to just put it into ctemp. And we're going to call it sample, let's see, sample.log, why not? And what we're going to write is simply just current date time. So we're going to say date time, dot now dot to long time string, so we can actually see that our task is running at certain times. So far so good. So we're going to remove unnecessary using just to clean things up. Now we're going to plug the job into our worker process. To do that, we're going to build a schedule. For that, course.net has a class called scheduler, and we're going to import the interface for it. And it's called iScheduler. And now we just need to import that interface in. And we're going to need a factory to build a schedule. And in this case, we're going to use standard scheduler factory. You can create a custom one, but typically we don't need customization, and standard scheduler factory works just fine. Now what we want to do is create our job and schedule it in. So we're going to create a method for that. And again, everything is going to be async, and we're going to say schedule jobs. So in this method, what we're going to do is create a new instance of our scheduler factory. And we're going to create new factory. Now we're going to create a scheduler using this factory, and it's pretty simple. Await scheduler factory dot get scheduler. So this gives us a default standard scheduler, and then we're going to start it up. So now the scheduler is ready to execute all of our scheduled jobs. Everything again is async await. Now we're going to create those jobs. To create the jobs and schedule them, we have to create two things. We're going to create job details, which is essentially a wrapper for our job, plus a trigger, which is a schedule on which job is going to execute. So the interface for that is job details, which is a job wrapper. We're going to call it sample. And in here, we're going to do job builder class. We're going to create a specific job, and for us, all we need to do is to make sure that we implement iJob interface. And since our sample job does, that's all we need to do. That will create a job. Now we're going to give it a name. That method is called with identity, and we're going to call it job 1. And you can optionally group jobs, and we're going to just call it group. Give it a group name like that. And then we need to build it. Since there is nothing else we're going to configure, we're just going to build it. Optionally, we could pass in some parameters into our job, sample, and we can say job data map dot add, and you can add whatever you want. I'm gonna just add a logger as an example, pass in the logger. But typically you can pass in other parameters. There is really no reason to pass in a logger. Now we gotta build a trigger. This interface is called iTrigger. And we just call it trigger. And in this case, we're gonna use trigger builder as opposite to the job builder. And it's simply static method go create, gonna give us an instance. Again, we're gonna name it. And we're gonna call it, 10 sec trigger, which is gonna fire every 10 seconds. And again, we can group things if we wanted to. Now we're gonna start it up. So we can start it whenever. In this case, we're gonna start now. We can start at a specific time as well. And then we're gonna specify what kind of schedule we wanna run it with, using which schedule method. And this one comes with a configuration. And we're gonna name the config, and in here we're gonna say config, and then we're gonna change some methods into it. So we're gonna use simple schedule. In this case, we schedule config dot with interval in seconds 10. Actually, because we don't need to do anything complicated, we're gonna just use simple schedule. And so this is gonna be with interval in seconds, and then we have to tell it what to do when the job runs so long that it misses the next interval. And so in this case, with misfire handling instruction, we can say we're just going to ignore it. So these are all the possible options you have if your job misses the next scheduled trigger. I'm just going to ignore it, which is pretty typical. And then you want to say how often do you want to repeat it. And so we're going to say repeat forever. And then again, we're going to do build to complete our process. Now we build a trigger and a job. And now we just need to schedule this job using this trigger. We're going to go scheduler, schedule job, and pass in what we created, which is our simple job and trigger. And also, optionally, we can pass in cancellation token, which our schedule is going to check on. And we already have that token that was passed into our execute async method. So what we're going to do is save that, is pass that into this method. So we're just going to pass it into schedule job method, and we're going to pass it further on down as we schedule the job. Stop in token, no underscore. There we go. Now we need to schedule, call this schedule job method, and we're going to do that straight up inside our execute async. We're going to call this schedule job, pass in our token. So far so good. Then this delay is simply how often does our service worker listen for operating system stop event. So it's automatically going to cancel or stop this cancellation token, set is cancellation requested to true. Windows services need to shut down within 30 seconds. So essentially all our method does is spins the process forever so it doesn't exit. Because as soon as you exit out of execute async method, your process stops. So this is essentially an infinite loop for us to run through to make sure that the process doesn't exit. Once cancellation is requested, the loop will exit, and we simply need to shut down our scheduler. Shut down, and that will stop the scheduler before our process shuts down. We want to exit our process cleanly. Now we can leave this echo to the screen. It doesn't really do anything, and it doesn't do anything bad. Now we're gonna test in our job that our passing of parameter works. So we pass the parameter called logger. So now we're gonna go to our job. In our logger is gonna be part of our context, and we can retrieve it by looking at data map. So we can say var logger equal to context merged data map dot get, and now we can give it the same name, and you can look here, same name we gave it here, logger. Get a logger, and then we're gonna cast it as simply iLogger. And in here we can say logger dot log information or whatever else we want to do, executed job, simple job. And if we want to, we can also echo to the screen at the same time, so we kind of see it working. Do that. So far so good. So now what we want to do is double check our code. So we pass in the logger, start now that. I think we're ready to test it. So let's open up that ctemp folder. So we have our ctemp folder, it's empty right now. Now we're going to run our test worker straight from Visual Studio. I'm going to let it run for a few, maybe 10-20 seconds to make sure that that file is created, so we know the job is executed. And you can see, like on the screen, executed job, simple job. And the same we see that worker running. That echoes to the screen too. So we're going to let execute job run a few times, and you can see it runs roughly about every 10 seconds, just how our schedule is done. And now we're going to kill it. And if we flip back to ctemp, we see our simple log. And if we open it, you see this is our first echo to the screen at 8:07, then 43, then at 7:52 and 02. So roughly about every 10 seconds our job executes. So far so good. Now let's actually install Windows service. And what I'm going to do is flip back, delete this file so we don't have it. And now in order to create a service, we gotta publish it. So what we're gonna do is publish this project. That what packages up the files and our service and everything else that it needs today. And we're gonna publish to a folder because we're gonna install it as a Windows service. And it doesn't matter what folder it is. Finish and then publish. So that should only take a few seconds. Now if we go ahead and go to that folder and we go to bin, and you can see that folder, bin, release 3.1, publish. This is our service. We call it test worker. So if we go to testworker.exe, this is our Windows service. So let's install it. To install it, I open administrative command prompt. Then I'm going to copy the path, and I'm going to use Windows SC utility. SC create, we're going to give it a name, test worker net core. And then there is only one parameter, which is path to executable. So I'm going to paste that in, and the executable is called testworker.exe. So it's pretty simple. SC create will create a Windows service. So hit enter. It echoes the created success. Then the name of the service is going to be testworker.net core. Now let's open up services in Windows and see if we see our service. To do that, we're going to do start, type services, open that up, go to test worker net core. As you can see, let's go back to ctemp. No files in there. The service has not started yet, so I gotta start it up. So right click, select start. Takes a second for our service to get started. As you can see, the log was actually already written by our started up service. So we'll let it run for another second. I could actually open it up. It's 8:11 p.m. and as you can see, that's what time it is now. I'm gonna let it run for another second. Okay, so we have a slight problem. Is our Windows service did not correctly get started. So let's fix that. So what I forgot to do is actually tell the host that it's a Windows service. So to do that, I'm going to install the Windows Services package. Manage NuGet packages. I'm going to install hosting.windows services. Microsoft.extension.hosting Windows services, latest version 3.1. Let's go ahead and install that. Set OK. So far so good. Now we go back to our program, to our entry point, and we gotta tell it use Windows service. And that's what will create Windows service for us. So let's rebuild the solution. And let's republish it. And because I'm going to publish to the same folder, I don't need to recreate Windows service. I can just start it up. So publish takes a second. Now I'm going to go back to Windows services. I'm actually going to delete the log file just to prove that everything is working. And let's start it up this time. Now it's started up and it's running. And if we go here, we're going to get a run for a couple of cycles to make sure that everything is working. And if we open the file, we can see that it ran 2 times and echoed to our log file 2 times. And if we wait another 10 seconds and I reopen the log file, and we see here's our 3rd time. That's it. Just to review, if we want to uninstall it incidentally, we can stop it and go back to our command and simply type sc delete, and this will remove the Windows service from Windows. There we go. And if we go here, refresh the screen, and the service will be removed. Delete success. Alright, so this concludes our process of creating a Windows service using .NET Core with full-blown dependency injection and so forth. You also saw the dialog in the C-Create where I could have enabled the Docker support on Linux and created immediately a Linux-based worker process. And that concludes our session. Thank you. Bye.